Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Costello. You can find me online as KD9CPB. I always wanted a really cool online nickname and never really found one that I liked, so I just went with the one that the FCC gave me when I got my ham radio license, which is KD9CPB. So you can find me very easily. I can assure you I'm the only KD9CPB.com out there. Not the best for privacy, but again, easy to find. All the slides for today up on GitHub. The link is right there. I'll be talking about Blue Team Social Impact, specifically how to volunteer your cyber defense skills without getting burnt out. I originally presented this at BlueTeamCon 2022, and it was a great time. I had the entire presentation into a about 25-minute or so format to leave time for questions in track 2 with the 30-minute window. And I'm very happy here on BlueTeamCon Online today that I do not have to worry about that exact time frame anymore. The slide deck's a little bit longer than when I originally presented. It has a bit more reference material. I guess we'll call it bonus content. But I actually took out a bit that's more on the personal side. One of my favorite things about Blue Team Con is the way that it's not recorded, it's all in person. You can share a lot more about yourself than I would normally share online, especially something that I know is going to end up on YouTube and who knows where for the rest of all eternity, right? So that's why I'm really looking forward to Blue Team Con 2023. Hope to see everyone there. And this Blue Team Online format is just fantastic. So big thanks to everyone at Blue Team Con for pulling this off and inviting me on. So let's get started here. I bet everyone's wondering, who is this dude and why should I care? So the first 2/3 of this slide or so are all the various things that I've done in my military and civilian career. So there's a recurring theme of some flavor of computer networking or network security throughout just about all of this. And today I'm actually a senior network engineer for a research and education campus here in the southwest suburbs of Chicago. It's super important that I mention that all of the views and opinions expressed in this presentation today are strictly those of my own, not necessarily those of any organization that I've been affiliated with in the past, currently, the future, etc. And that's very important because I'm mostly here today to talk about the personal volunteer stuff that's on all the way to the right of the slide. And some of the stuff has nothing to do with technology at all. Some of it does. I think one of the biggest wins that I've gotten in Blue Team Social Impact has been with Congressman Danny Davis's Technology Advisory Committee when I was living in his district. Be talking a lot about that. But the one that I'm the most proud of by a large margin is I worked my way up the ranks to substitute bingo caller at American Legion Post 854 in Evergreen Park, Illinois. And sadly, due to the pandemic, they don't have bingo anymore, so it's all kind of died off now. But even with that extremely non-technical volunteer opportunity, believe it or not, there were times where having the blue team cybersecurity knowledge actually really helped out and made a positive social impact. So I'll be talking about that a little bit more than you might think. So before we talk about all that social impact stuff, I should probably define what we actually mean by it. And there isn't a one-size-fits-all definition. But the top Google result says any significant or positive changes that solve or at least address social injustice and challenges. Now, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think the one big takeaway I get from that definition is that social impact is just so much more than volunteering. I'm going to focus a lot on volunteering during this talk, but again, regardless of your definition of social impact, there's some really, really big ideas, some really good stuff. Too much to unpack in this single presentation. I'm going to mostly focus on the blue team side of things, how to use those blue team skills to get a bigger social impact. But for some of us, maybe it might make sense if you're a blue team in your day job, blue teamer in your day job, I should say. Maybe you don't want to do the stuff, full time, like as your volunteer hobby and things. But there's all these special skills that we have that I think we often forget about that could really help our communities. And I'll be talking about that quite a bit today. One big thing I should mention, so one of the reasons I put this into the CFP for Blue Team Con isn't so much because of me personally, it's actually my wife. She's the head of social impact at a software company, and one of the nice little byproducts of the pandemic lockdowns was that we became coworkers inside of our condo where we were living at the time, which had lofted ceilings. There was very little privacy. She could hear all of my conversations. I could hear all of hers. And I learned a lot about what she actually does in her day job with social impact. And that really got the gears in my head thinking of like, wow, there's actually some good cybersecurity stuff, and especially cyber defense and blue team knowledge that could benefit from all these things that I'm hearing her talk about. I sure wish that a lot of the network engineering stuff that I was blabbing about probably bored her to death, and she didn't really get a whole lot of that experience, but I got a lot out of that being co-workers with her for all that time. Now we're in a suburban house that has actual ceilings and there's privacy in our offices, but I do miss from time to time kind of having that almost open office concept in our condo at the start of the pandemic. Okay, so I'm going to start off with some easy Blue Team social impact wins, and then we'll work our way into the medium and big stuff as we go along. So, first and foremost, if you're in a role where you have any sway whatsoever about hiring interns, let's say if you're at a NOC or a SOC or a help desk, etc., advocate for interns somewhere from, let's say, Year Up or Genesis Works. So, these are programs that recruit mainly in underserved areas and get people upskilled in various IT, cybersecurity, etc. skills. And so a lot of these people, maybe the only job opportunities that they knew about are more in the service industry field. Maybe you're making $15 to $20 an hour tops. There isn't a whole lot of upward mobility at all in those jobs. But Year Up, on the other hand, you get your way into a help desk or IT or even a SOC type role where you're just doing all the bottom of the line stuff that no one really wants to do at these organizations, but you're working your way into an IT career and making a very, very big step on that ladder up to a real meaningful technology career versus going into something like service industry. So again, big, big, big win here, not only for the intern, but everyone in that intern's household if it works out well. And just think about if every block in an underserved neighborhood had someone that had that experience, gets a tech career, one house on every single block, that starts really making a difference in communities. Just so much winning that places like Year Up and Genesis Works are doing. Getting youth involved in cybersecurity stuff. This is something that I often take for granted, and I actually have a little bit of a personal story here. So I have a little cousin. He's not little anymore. He's 21, but when he was a teenager, I would like to text him and just ask him, hey, how's school going? Have you thought much about what you want to do? I knew he's like really into video games, so I tried to like kind of sway him a little bit into IT and cyber type things. And normally I would not get a reply. I get a text maybe 48 business hours later, just a little non-answer, whatever. But if I asked him, hey, what are you doing on PlayStation 4 nowadays? What's the latest game? Like, what's everyone doing on Minecraft? No joke, I would get an amazing, meaningful conversation, like a big text back within a couple minutes, and we'd have really good chats about that sort of stuff. And I didn't directly do this, but talk about a great opportunity to bring up something like Log4j if you're talking to someone that's in their teens just thinking about what they want to do in life. Hey, I heard you like Minecraft. Did you hear about this Log4j thing? Well, there's actually a lot of stuff that a lot of really high paid people had to do because of this silly Minecraft thing. Like, isn't that wild? And those little kind of breadcrumbs of info can really go a long way to someone that's very early into thinking about what it is that they want to do in life. So again, a lot of really good stuff there when done properly. Random acts of InfoSec kindness. So this tweet from Melissa is just wonderful. So what she did is there's an Uber driver that she was talking to, figured out that, hey, Alyssa has this awesome book involving cybersecurity careers, and the fact that she was not only able to give this person advice on the Security Plus, but had a really positive interaction. Like, let's say that person was maybe struggling with Security Plus that day, or maybe they just failed it. And I thought, oh gosh, I don't want to spend another couple $100 on this exam again. Maybe I'll just be an Uber driver the rest of my life. But then you pick up someone like Alyssa, you have this really great interaction, you think, you know what, I can do this. I'm going to pass that test. And then maybe they end up getting into a path that takes them to the CISSP, and maybe they'll be my boss in a couple years. Who knows? It's just crazy the amount of impact that those random acts of InfoSec kindness can do. So just keep that in mind, especially next time you're in an Uber or Lyft, anything like that. Dropping cybersecurity knowledge as a bingo ticket seller. So again, At that American Legion Post bingo, I didn't just earn the title of substitute bingo caller. I had to work my way up. And the way that everyone starts off with volunteering usually is selling these like these silly little bingo bonanza tickets at the start of the day. And so you're walking around selling them. It's primarily senior citizens, a lot of grandmas, people that this is like not so much because they like bingo, but it's like the social thing to do on the weekend as well. So you got, maybe 100, 150 mostly senior citizens. And as you're walking around selling these $1 bingo bonanza tickets, you make a little bit of conversation here and there. Many of the bingo participants knew that I was a huge computer nerd, and they'd ask stuff now and then, just have these little conversations. But let's say that I'm selling my $1 bingo bonanza ticket, and I hear someone mention, oh, I had this great conversation with this nice young man that called me on my phone and asked me if my computer was slow, and it was, and we just started talking, and he asked for my mother's maiden name, my social security number, and he got remote access to my computer to speed it up, and just they're really looking out for me. That's when you have to say, okay, time out. I'm actually not going to sell you the $1 bingo bonanza ticket. We're going to get you a credit freeze right now and make sure that this does not turn into a scam. Again, that story didn't actually happen, but you get the idea, especially when you're working with senior citizens in your community. A lot of these people, it's just so sad because they often get written off by, oh, they don't want tech advice, they're just kind of behind the times. But a lot of these scams that target senior citizens, they do a lot of harm to all communities throughout everywhere nationwide. And it's just so sad that you hear about all of these different scams for seniors, and the reason there's so many of them is because they're actually working. And so having basic cybersecurity hygiene knowledge that you might be able to work into some of those small conversations, again, huge social impact potential win right there. Cash donations. Now, we all know that cash rules everything around us, but at the same time, you're not going to get like big, warm, fuzzy feelings from just writing a check. I feel like getting a little bit more involved with the community, some of these easy examples here, is a better idea than just donating money. But there's some cool tricks you can unlock with cash donations that I'll talk about these next couple slides too that you might want to keep in mind. So we've been talking about easy Blue Team social impact wins. Let's talk about some issues with this stuff. So especially when you're doing these, tiny little things that add up, it's very easy to kind of get off track of your own personal career development and, overextend yourself. And don't do that. You got to take care of yourself first. It's not selfish at all to carve out more time for your own studying for certs or even just relaxing. We can't all do it all. I wrote a blog post about that a while back if you're curious about more of my personal experiences with that. Being mindful of time affluence. So this is a super cool term that I learned in this Coursera course. It's totally free. I can't remember, I think it was like a New York Times article that talked about it at the start of the pandemic. I did it just because I was bored out of my mind in April of 2020. And I'm so glad I did. And it talked about this concept of time affluence where even if you're in, let's say, not the most meaningful work job, like you're at a help desk or a knock or a sock, but you're only working 40 hours a week and you don't take the work home with you, you got a lot of time affluence that someone that's working at a full-time IT job with a ton of unpaid overtime and not being able to leave your on-call phone off for more than a couple weeks. Like, in all reality, a person that's making more money on that always on call type IT role might have a lot less happiness than someone that's doing a 40-hour a week help desk role, might be making less money, but having that additional time affluence to actually enjoy life. So if any of what I just said speaks to you, definitely check out that course. Could not recommend it enough. It's free. Some really good stuff there when it comes to preventing burnout. Getting to know organizations. This is a very interesting little hack that's in Cisco Network Academy. So if you click that link, you're actually able to search by zip code various Cisco Network Academies in your region. So I'm very lucky that about 6 miles southwest of where I grew up is a extremely good community college, great Cisco Network Academy. That's where I started off, and they're well funded. They're doing great. But if you go 6 miles northeast, you're in one of the toughest neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago, zip code 60621. That's the neighborhood of Inglewood. And there's also Cisco Network Academies. Unfortunately, they're not getting many resources at all. And so getting to see some of those organizations that are in areas that are underserved, you might be able to do a lot more with the more underserved places that no one wants to go to versus the really good places where there's no shortage of people that are willing to help, tutor, etc. Again, we're talking about social impact here, trying to make all our communities a better place. Getting to know organizations like that is a huge win, but again, there's some issues. There's some for-profit organizations that are a little bit predatory for that sort of thing too. So you got to watch out. It's definitely a double-edged sword. Now, let's say you advocated for that year up intern or someone that might be a little bit non-traditional into an internship role, and things aren't going so smooth. Definitely check out a book called Radical Candor. I really wish I knew about this one far earlier in my career. Not so much as a manager, but as a regular tech employee, there's just all these really cool strategies about setting reasonable expectations and having tough conversations without coming across as an asshole. Pardon my French, but I think that's actually on the cover of the book is how to be a kick-ass manager without losing your humanity. And so, again, great book if that speaks to you. Lastly, try not to recommend obsolete things. I am so guilty of this. So the picture in this slide is from Harold Washington Library in Chicago, about a mile from BlueTeamCon. And I took this picture right before BlueTeamCon 2022. Again, keyword here, 2022. So when I was a teenager in circa 2007, I would take the Orange Line train to Harold Washington Library. I would check out these books, and that was how I got the Security Plus back in the day. Well, the problem is a lot of those books are the same exact ones on the shelf, not necessarily the same resources that you would want studying for Security Plus in 2023. Now, there's a couple newer books there. It's not all bad, but I feel like for the longest time, I always recommended, go to the library, get the Security Plus book. That's a great way to start. When in all reality, times have changed. There's way better remote learning tools, many of which are free, that the VetSet organization, even if you're not anything at all to do with the military veteran community at all, they got this amazing GitHub page that talks about all these awesome InfoSec resources where you can start learning blue team skills. Again, trying to have a big social impact, trying to get people interested in these career paths so they can have meaningful careers, making all sorts of good money and bringing it back into their communities. Like, there's just so much good stuff that is in that awesome InfoSec page that I feel I was not recommending to people, and I really wish I was for many years. So again, just because a resource that worked for you when you were getting Security Plus or CSSP, whenever your career was starting to blossom, it might not necessarily be the resource that makes the most sense here in 2023. So definitely keep that in mind. Okay, so let's get into some of the medium Blue Team social impact wins. So a little bit, let's call it higher risk, higher reward type situations. And one of the biggest ones that I could recommend, and I haven't done this personally, but I've heard so many good success stories from 1milliondegrees.org that I just had to mention it, and I stole the screenshot from their website. Some of these established mentoring programs are fantastic. I mean, just look at these scholar demographics from 1 million degrees. They focus on tutoring and providing resources for community college students. And gosh, just look at this. Like, this is so fantastic. This fixes so many of the issues with trying to get cybersecurity and technology teams that look like the communities that they exist in. I mean, this is great stuff here. Definitely give them a look if any type of mentoring of community colleges might be up your alley. Community college students, community college students, I should say. And any flavor of like doing STEM talks or merit badge type clinics that your employer might offer, or maybe your local church, YMCA, etc. There's always those type of opportunities out there. I've been doing quite a few of those with my day job recently, and there's some really cool wins that you could do, that opportunities that you might not otherwise have to talk with younger people that might be interested in blue team type things. And if they hear about it and they go to school for it and everything works out, fantastic. If they didn't hear about it, then they might do something completely different that might not be bringing them and their community as much good stuff as being a blue teamer would be. So again, not to have the recurring theme of trying to get people into the blue team field, but there's just so much social impact opportunity there that I can't help but keep talking about that. Actually getting involved with Year Up, Genesis Works, etc. So not just hiring an intern from there, but actually helping with their program. Kara in Chicago is super good at this. Again, so many options there that might be a good idea if you're looking to volunteer more. Now, dropping cyber defense knowledge as a bingo caller. So this is something that I did not do personally, but I kind of wish I did. If I'm calling bingo and the bingo machine breaks because it's just this old jankety thing, what a great opportunity with a microphone and 100+ senior citizens in front of me to say, hey, while we're waiting for the bingo machine to get fixed, have you thought about if you're using the same password on your email as your bank account or as your IRS or Social Security accounts? Maybe go ahead and don't do password reuse. That'd be a fantastic thing to try out. And all of that silly stuff. And again, I know it's super quirky, staying with this bingo caller analogy, but seriously, just trying to get some of that basic cyber defense, cyber hygiene knowledge into the most vulnerable senior citizens out there. Again, the social impact behind that is huge. That might be the difference between a grandma having enough money in her savings account to have a nice little meal, get her groceries, be able to get her medication, or maybe having to only choose from one of the three of those. And that's really sad. These scammers are doing a lot of harm in our communities, and I really think that's something that us as blue teamers have superpowers to help quash. Lastly, advising on blue team duties at the nonprofit of your choosing. So this one's tricky, but I know personally at our American Legion, hey, I was looking at our website, so we actually don't have the right domain name. This is causing all types of issues on the HTTPS certificate. Maybe, can I help you guys fix that? Or maybe we'll get this behind Cloudflare or something. There's definitely a lot of opportunities that are not providing simple help desk support or turning into an on-call tech resource at nonprofits. That might make a lot of sense depending on the nonprofit that you're working with, especially if it's one in your local community that you're very passionate about. Just be careful on this one, though, and this leads into the next slide of medium mistakes. And I know it's at the bottom, but I'm actually going to go ahead and just quadruple highlight this one and say whatever you do, just make sure if you're doing blue team stuff at a local nonprofit, do not become the unpaid help desk. It's just, you definitely don't want to do that. And some of the media mistakes that I've made over the years, again, I've been very fortunate to work places that are very supportive of doing things like those STEM talks and the merit badge clinics, but try not to depend solely on your employer for those type of social impact opportunities. And the reason I bring that up is when times are good and everything's going great and there's plenty of budget and plenty of time to have those type of events, it's fantastic. You get to build a relationship with some of these nonprofits, and it's good stuff. But if times aren't so good, going so well at your employer, and now you're thinking about budget cuts and layoffs and all sorts of nasty stuff, that's hard enough on you as it is. If there is a layoff and now you're doing the work of other coworkers that aren't there anymore, and you have a nonprofit calling about, hey, are we doing this merit badge clinic? It's just not a good position to be in. So try extra hard to not get in the middle of those type of situations if you can at all avoid it, especially if you're non-management. But that being said, it's just trying to be active with these nonprofits, especially ones where your employer is sponsoring some of these opportunities and trying to help them out, but without having to be that awkward middleman. It's hard. And this also involves knowing when and how to say no. Again, this is hard, and there's a book I really like called Your Perfect Right that goes into this further. But being able to say assertively no to certain nonprofits, or no, I actually can't be your 24/7 unpaid help desk if the bingo machine dies. I'll help you when I'm on site, that's fine, but I can't be called up if something happens. That type of conversation can be hard, but it's necessary to maintain your own sanity and not get burnt out. Seriously, use your employee assistance program. If you have it, there's zero shame in asking for help. I really like this picture. I don't know how it's going to turn up on the recording and over the stream, but this is one of my new favorite books. It's actually we got it for my daughter. It's called Woohoo, You're Doing Great, but I love it so much. It's almost I would even go as far as saying, if you have someone that you would normally buy Oh the Places You'll Go, that Dr. Seuss book that everyone gets college graduates around May, I would actually recommend this book even more than that, because this little phrase of, are you feeling quite upended, underprepared, and overextended? It's okay. There's no shame in that. Just ask for some help. Again, employee EAPs are great. Lots of other really good resources there. Again, that Coursera happiness class, the science of well-being, is another great one to avoid being underextended like our poor purple snake friend in this picture. Okay, so finally, we're getting to winning big. Now, when I mean winning big, I'm talking about the stuff that is bigger than just like one person's worth of contribution to social impact. So we're talking about stuff where you'll be partnering with either elected officials, nonprofits, etc. Like, this is not stuff that you're flying solo on anymore. Now, writing your local elected officials all the way up to your national elected officials, a lot of really good social impact can happen there. Talk about more about that in a couple minutes, but this is not like a set it and forget it type thing. This is something that you have to be persistent and committed on. Don't expect to just write one letter and change the world. Like, there's a lot that goes on when you write your elected officials, which we'll talk much more about. And just, again, going on that theme of the Cisco Neticat hack that I was talking earlier, where you can see all the programs in disadvantaged areas. Now, this is where cash donations can actually really help you out. Now, let's say if I send a $100 donation to a program in an underserved community that's doing Cisco Neticat, and in the notes field of, let's say they have like, a PayPal type thing on their website, you say, hey, I'm actually Tom Costello. I do network security stuff. I love what you guys are doing. I'm a Network Academy alum myself. If I can be of any assistance, please let me know. And I've done that a couple times myself. It's never actually worked where I've had someone return my message and, getting to do social impact type things for Cisco Network Academy or one of those curriculums in an underserved community. I want to do that someday, though. Again, if you do that successfully, please let me know. But if you do those little trial donations, trying to figure out, hey, is this an organization that's going to return my message and I want to work with, or am I going to get crickets? If it's crickets, maybe you move on, and too bad, so sad that they'll use the money to do whatever it is they need to do. But there's a good chance that little donation in the grand scheme of things could lead to some really big wins with enough time and effort. Now, volunteering at cyber defense competitions. So personally, I was actually a collegiate cyber defense competition competitor back in the early 2010s when I was in school. And I actually transferred to the four-year university that I went to largely because of the CCDC program. Had it not been for that, I don't think I would have found the school that I went to. And quite honestly, I don't even know if I would have done a four-year degree program at all. And if I didn't do that, I really don't know what job I would have today, but I'm fairly certain it would not be the one I currently have. And so these collegiate cyber defense competitions do a lot, not just for the students, but all the volunteers, all of the people that come together to provide these opportunities to these students. So much social impact winning here. If you get nothing else out of this entire presentation, just all these acronyms here: CCDC, NCL, Cyber Patriot, and of course we'll mention some of my colleagues at my day job run the Department of Energy Cyber Force competition, and that program in particular is absolutely knocking it out of the park when it comes to social impact. The things that they've been doing to try to get people from non-traditional career fields into some of their workforce development programs for DOE Cyber Force, absolutely wonderful stuff. Definitely check them out if any of that sounds interesting. So many volunteer opportunities, so many great social impact things that are in the works over there. Dropping cybersecurity knowledge to a congressional staffer. Again, so let's say you are persistent and committed to writing your local elected officials. You're not going to get a letter back or really anything from the elected official themselves, but you might get put on a mailing list. That's what happened to me. I got put on a mailing list, and I ended up going to one of Congressman Danny Davis's town halls at Malcolm X College. I went to it, and it was fantastic. I wrote another letter about how fantastic it was and more about cybersecurity stuff. And I got a phone call from a staffer, and this ended up leading to me getting on the Technology Advisory Committee. And before I knew it, I was providing feedback for this Computer and Internet Equity Act. And this was so cool because there were sections of it which were really written around like, hey, how can we get resources for people that are trying to learn to code and program and things in underserved communities? And I stepped up and said, well, this is great, but not everyone's going to want to learn to code. We got to do cybersecurity and other career options too. And so some of the wording in that act was changed due to the things that I was saying. And I think that was probably one of the biggest wins that I've had to this day. It's just so cool to have that level of involvement. Sadly, I moved out of the district and things have fizzled out a little bit, but still, there's so many opportunities writing those elected officials when it comes to social impact. Just good stuff to keep in mind. Lastly, hackforkids.com and other hackathons. There's so much awesome stuff out there, especially here in Chicago. I know not everyone on Blue Team Online is in Chicago, even though BlueTeamCon is Chicago-based. There's all types of different events that are doing these hackathon-type things for kids and just all over the place that the social impact wins there are endless. So, yes, I am actually saying that writing to Congress may actually work. And I didn't get this idea myself. This was actually from a 2019 DEF CON talk that I got to see in person before the world shut down. It's on DEF CON's YouTube channel. Check it out. I'm a huge fan of that talk. It really changed my opinion on writing my elected officials. I have the example letter that I sent to all of mine in the GitHub folder. Yes, absolutely try this at home. No, don't expect the elected official to actually reply to you. Again, you'll probably get a staffer. You might get like a pre-canned letter or something. Your mileage may vary. Maybe you'll have a lot of success at the first attempt, but expect that to take a while to get any meaningful results. And even if you don't get a reply, just the fact that you're writing an elected official about, hey, I do blue team type things. I like cybersecurity. I want to help my community. Is there anything I can do here? If enough people write that, it's eventually going to get put on a list of like, 50 people wrote in this month about cybersecurity. I guess we should probably think about that topic some more. Again, that can lead to a good positive social impact there, and a big thing to keep in mind as blue teamers. Now, there's big trouble with going big, though. So I met a guy that we got along really great, and we decided, I ended up buying the domain, thepybay.org. I thought it was so neat, and the fact that it was available. And as a part of Congressman Danny Davis's Technology Advisory Committee, what we wanted to do was have like more Raspberry Pi type projects in like the west side and south side of Chicago. And it started off real good, but it was just like everything was working against us between the Omicron variant of COVID that fall and then the Raspberry Pi supply chain crisis. And we both had family things come up, and it was just a big mess. And I feel like, in all reality, I probably should not have spent that time trying to do all that stuff on my own with pybay.org, reinventing the wheel. It would have been a much better use of my time volunteering somewhere like Europe or 1 Million Degrees, Hack for Kids, etc. So seriously, don't do it. Don't go out and start your nonprofit unless you really truly have like massive resources in a massive amount of time to throw into it. I think the pybay.org actually expired now. If you want it, just hit me up after this if I still have it. But the big thing here is that the norm is actually to fizzle out with a lot of these bigger both elected official and nonprofit type projects. It's not like a firewall migration at our day job as blue teamers where this firewall migration has to work. Like it is not an option for that to fizzle out and our business or organization doesn't have connectivity. But for example, that computer act that I had in the last slide, like that just fizzled out in the House of Representatives, and that's normal. It's just it really took me a while to figure that out. That when things don't go as planned, that's just kind of the norm for a lot of those bigger, again, when it comes to elected officials and nonprofit type initiatives. Now, again, big thing here, cognitive distortion is real. I'm not going to go too much into this. Definitely Google the term cognitive distortion if this sounds up your alley. But one of the kind of big things that they push in this book that Dr. Burns wrote, you can buy it for like $2 used. There's a bazillion copies out there. Every library has it. It's called Feeling Good. And he talks a lot about how, especially people like us in the blue team field, where if you have something that just, totally doesn't go as planned, and it's on your mind all the time, and it's like, I'm just thinking about how badly I screwed up the pybay.org, when in all reality, there's been so much other good, positive stuff that's happened in my life, and I just need to remind myself that there isn't going to be a Chicago Tribune article on the front page about how Tom Costello tried and failed with pybay.org. Like, that's silly. That's not a thing. Don't let the little drop of ink cloud the entire beaker of water when it comes to your own personal happiness, and especially when it comes to burnout prevention. Again, if any of what I just said sounds like it applies to you, check that book out. Check out, I think there's even like a top 10 list of some sorts that talk about those sorts of things to avoid burnout and more. So again, really good resources out there. Just be aware of that. And lastly, backwards planning time commitments. If you're trying to go big with social impact, it's going to eat up a big deal of your time. Don't write checks that you can't cash when it comes to time. Again, going big is not for everyone. It's not for me. I feel like nowadays I'm focused more on some of those easy and medium wins. I know my own personal professional development. I should probably be spending more time on Cisco's Rev Up to Research program than doing all the random stuff around the house that I've been doing to procrastinate on it. But the big thing that I'm trying to push here is don't reinvent that wheel. Some of the organizations that are already out there and your elected officials are probably the best way to move the needle when it comes to social impact, not so much doing it all on your own. Okay, so some closing thoughts here. Any volunteering can be Blue Team Social Impact if you get creative enough. We talked about some of the things that could happen for our theoretical substitute bingo caller. Again, that was one of the best volunteer opportunities that I ever had. I really enjoyed that, and I'm really sad that it's not a thing anymore post-pandemic. But even if it's something totally not Blue Team related, any volunteering, all those little cyber defense tidbits of knowledge, they add up over time. Getting the word out about those cyber defense competitions. Again, if you get nothing else out of this presentation, keep in mind that those competitions have opportunities for sponsorship, volunteers. There's just so many opportunities to have big social impact wins with those cyber defense competitions. Oh my gosh, it's just amazing. I have personally benefited from being a competitor back in the day, and I feel like I need to be doing more to pay it forward and get more people, especially those from underserved communities, into these competitions, into these career paths, and again, trying to make the world a better place via Blue Team skills, whether it's getting people into the career or applying them at various nonprofits and whatnot. Lastly, all it takes is one positive interaction with technology to really change someone's life, especially people that are younger, just getting involved with this stuff, and just be mindful of that. Like, we have this superpower as someone that knows cybersecurity things, and people are always asking like, oh, are you a hacker? Are you like doing the red team thing? And that's not at all me. I'm a blue teamer, probably blue teamer for life at this point. And just keep in mind that, all of this stuff that we're talking about here, it adds up, it really influences people, and just be mindful of that. So with that, I think that's about all I have to say here today. I'm almost exactly at the 40-minute mark I thought I would be at, so that's great stuff. You can contact me online, kd9cpb.com. Infosec.exchange is my preferred social media platform nowadays. You'll see me there at kd9cpb. Slides are up on GitHub, and thank you so much for watching.